Hey, can you give us an update on Quentin Lake?
I have not gotten that update, but I'll have more for you on Wednesday. But how tough he is, I think might be a little bit of time for him.
What was kind of the initial diagnosis? I know you're
Got
waiting
his
probably for
elbow.
tests,
He
but
got
what?
he got it. He got his elbow. It kind of looked like his elbow was caught in a weird spot. Get an MRI and see what that says. But I think because of how tough he is, the feelings are that it might be some time and not great for our captain and leader, and bummed out for him.
Uh, Potentially season ending or just something that's
You
going
know
to
what?
keep him out for?
I think probably safe for me to wait until I get with Reggie and talk to he and Dr. Elatrosh and kind of really see the totality of it all. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. But it's probably going to be some time for him, whether he's on IR or whether this represents a season-ending injury or whether he ends up having to get surgery. All those things I'll kind of need a little bit more information to give you true clarity there.
Who would step into that role, or how? What are some ways that you will make up for if he's out? How are you
Yeah,
going to do that?
we'll discuss that. Just was with the defense talking about if that's the case, what are those possibilities? But I did think Josh Wallace deserves a ton of credit for stepping up, doing an excellent job. Kitchens ended up playing more snaps than he typically would have, and did a phenomenal job. Even Jacoby Durant slid inside at the end and did a great job at the nickel position. And so there's a lot of different things. And we talked about that we've added McCreary, and we'll see what that looks like. But I was really proud of Josh Wallace, Cam Kitchens, and Jacoby doing wearing multiple hats, being able to play outside and inside. Those guys did an outstanding job. It's a tremendous credit to Aubrey and Coach Beak for what they were able to do.
How so you can replace you know next to me, but can you replace that kind of leadership that he has provided?
No, you don't replace. Listen, guys are asked to. Here's the thing: you got to be able to figure out how to put guys in successful situations. You don't replace a Quentin Lake. He's so valuable for so many reasons, with what he can do, with who he is as a human, with the way that he elevates and leads. He's a glue guy for us. If he is out, that's obviously a big loss, and we love him. But we'll have to figure out what is the next best thing for us to be able to do. But I think it would be insincere to think that you're going to ask somebody to do the things that he's capable of. It's what makes him so special. But I do have a lot of confidence in the other guys and what we'll be able to figure out to try to ultimately, have our defense continue to play at a high level if he is going to miss some time.
And then finally, any other injuries from last night?
Xavier Smith got the concussion. I think he's going to be okay. I talked to him last night. He sounded good. He's obviously got to go through the protocol. And then Higbee got his ankle rolled up on the screen that we threw to Puka on the 3rd and 15, didn't come back in the game. He's so tough, so we'll see how he's feeling. Sometimes those ankle injuries can either be better or they can end up being worse after the adrenaline wears off from, feeling in the game. So we'll see once I get with Reggie about him. Those were the 3 guys that had the injuries.
Thanks
Stu,
very much.
You're welcome, Gary.
Stu.
Sean, with this Sunday's game being the Aaron Donald celebration game, I know you've spoken a ton about just what he's meant to you personally and professionally, but could you maybe expand on that a little bit more, and also just if is there a story that maybe serves as an example of that?
Yeah, I think I don't think there'd be one story that's appropriate, but I think it's kind of cool that he's getting it. What's really special about Aaron is the amount of work and time that he put in, and when you can really hear him say, "I'm full, I'm complete," and how content he is, whether that be going back to what he did at college, getting his number retired at Pitt was pretty special. And then to be able to get recognized, I was so fortunate to be with him for the amount of time that I was, but what a unique human, what an amazing father, husband, son. He's just all about the right stuff. And he, I think the best example of leadership is seen, not said. He knew when to say the right things, but he just modeled the way every single day. It's really easy to be able to show what it looks like when you can just reference stories of somebody that a lot of our guys have played with, that epitomized, those things, that stayed humble, was always willing to be coached, demanded to be coached, was a great man in terms of his values and character that he had. And, I love that guy and what he meant to me. And I really just, like I've said, the most important thing was he led me into his life, and you got some insight into knowing what really mattered to him. But he sure was a hell of a football player too, and I'm damn grateful. And there's a lot of blessings that have come my way because I was fortunate enough to be able to coach him.
And then secondly, just all those examples of leading by example, just how did that help with, especially installing the culture that you wanted in this building when you first got here?
Yeah, I remember my grandpa saying this when I used to talk to him about why they thought they were able to sustain such a level of success in San Fran for the years he was there. And, when your best players are the ones that model the way, those become the standards and everybody falls in line and nobody's above it. And there's an extreme ownership, there's an accountability, there's a work ethic, there's an enjoyment for celebrating other successes. There's the right mindset, and then there's the right energy that you bring every single day. And when he did that, it's like, well, if Aaron's doing that, then I better fall in line. And it's no different than the way it was for Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott. And I think that was what we set out to do. And I think that's what's been right in a lot of the things that have gone on here. And Aaron is one of the central figures to that for the last handful of years.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it, man.
Nick.
Hey, Coach.
What's up, Nick?
Wanted to ask you, just obviously every season is different. This season is in particular. How have you grown? How have you seen this team grow over the course from training camp to where you guys are now? You guys really seem like you're in a vibe and really a good sync, as far as getting out there and really getting after it on both sides of the ball, including special teams.
Yeah, I think the connection. I think the biggest thing I would say, Nick, is guys are understanding how the practice, performance, and preparation can equal game reality. They know how important it is to be able to say, hey, you're doing one of two things every single snap. You're continuing momentum or you're giving yourself an opportunity to snatch it back. And I think this group epitomizes a lot of the stuff that we want to be about: the work, the enjoyment for each other's successes, the appropriate mindset, the energy. I think in a lot of instances, we got a lot of guys that are checking the boxes for the same thing I was just saying to Stu about Aaron. And there's different ways that we can win the football game. I think that's a big thing. And then when we put it together, we're capable of being pretty special. But understanding how different games need to be played. I think that's a tremendous credit to the way that Matthew's played and taken care of the football. We've been opportunistic defensively. We've tightened up in the right spots. And, I just think, I think guys are learning and understanding how to be able to play off of one another, but most importantly, pick each other up when needed, and stay connected through the challenging moments that are inevitable in this season and this journey that we're on.
And also, too, just looking at a young guy like Terrance Ferguson, what have you been impressed by his development? And has anything surprised you either in games or in practices that you've seen come to life?
Well, I think the improvement and just the overall upside that he has is exciting. I love the guy's demeanor. I think he's got great examples of veteran players of what it looks like. He's got a great coach in Scooter Huff. So I just think the guy continues to go to work. And I think he enjoys playing. I don't feel like any moment's too big for him. And he's only going to continuously get better. He's smart as shit, too. Our tight ends, for them to do as many things as they're doing, they're really smart. And there's going to be some great learning ops from yesterday. But I love what he's about. I love the guys he's playing around. And I'm really excited for, how bright I think his future is.
Thank you, Coach.
You got it, man.
Adam.
Sean, the name of the game for the rushing attack this year has been efficiency, but could you tell how much it meant to Kyren to break off a couple 30-yarders yesterday?
Oh, they were huge, and we needed those. I thought they were key and critical. I did, and I thought he did a great job. You get him clean to the second and third levels and slash running and, no wasted movement and being able to work edges on a really good post player that does a good job of finding his one shot to find an angle. And so it was awesome for Kyren. And we want to be able to build on that. And I was really proud of him. It did mean a lot. I could tell it meant a lot to him. But hey, it meant a lot to our team. And I thought he was outstanding yesterday.
When the explosives aren't there, is that something you ever talk with the running back room about in terms of like you're still contributing even if the chunk plays aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think you want guys to have to press. I think you want them to play one play at a time, try to make the most of it. And I think those things organically occur. Now you want to be able to create a heightened awareness when those ops might present themselves. But, Mike Shanahan used to say, you got to coach a runner how to run. You got the wrong runner. So I think you give these guys a couple keys, and then I think a lot of the instincts take over, and sometimes those things come organically. And thought he did a great job of being able to play off of his momentum where he's breaking a tackle, but he's able to be strong through the initial contact. So now he's able to square post players up and work edges on them, and it was awesome.
You talked yesterday about some of the struggles with early down efficiency that hasn't been characteristic of this team this year. I'm curious, like now that you've looked at the tape, what do you think were some of those issues after the first quarter?
I think very minimal opportunities. I mean, you look at it, we had, the fourth drive where we went 3 and out, had some uncharacteristic things that occurred in that sequence. You go -5 when we throw a check down where we're not very good on the protection. You get 6 yards on a run, and then on 3rd down and 9, we had miscommunication where we didn't handle the pressure. We didn't get some things off that are typically what we're doing. So now you go 3 and out on your 4th drive. Then you don't see the ball till midway through the 3rd quarter. You turn it over on your 2nd play, after we've ended up getting a turnover. So there's about 5 plays that we probably played in an hour and a half of real time, and then you end up having, a 7-play drive where, we have an uncharacteristic drop. We ended up jumping off sides on a 3rd down and 10, and then we were a yard short on a 3rd and 15. So you punt that away. Then we score on the next possession, and then you look at it and it was a weird kind of game where we had some uncharacteristic, inability to execute for a couple things. And you get behind the sticks against a great team like that, and your opportunities are minimal. That's kind of how it can unfold. And then, when you do get up 9 points with the game the way that it was unfolding, you're saying, let's be smart. You don't want to be so conservative. And there's a couple calls that I want back, but I'm excited as hell about us being able to learn from it. It was a weird game, the way that it played out for the offense to be able to get into a rhythm, but early down efficiency is always going to be key and critical, and we weren't efficient enough.
And then Emmanuel matched up against JSN more than any defender has this season. What did you guys like about that matchup going into
I thought he did a good job, and in a lot of instances, it's because JSN was into the boundary, and it wasn't necessarily anything other than kind of where he was aligned in the formation. They do a good job of moving him around, but he's competitive. He's got the competitive stamina. He's continuing to improve with his techniques. I thought really all 3 of our corners were outstanding yesterday, given the challenge and the stress that group presents. And, JSN is excellent. He gets a lot of the credit that he deserves, but I thought Forbes did a great job, and Jacoby and D. Will when they were lined up against him as well.
Thank you.
You got it, man.
Wyatt.
Hey, Sean. Like you said, the corners had great games yesterday. In terms of that rotation, is that something that's kind of planned out before the game, or is it kind of just how the game flows that you guys are making those decisions, and who's responsible for those?
Aubrey does a great job. It's a combination. You want to play all those guys because we feel really good about those 3. And I think it worked out where Forbes had 64. I think the other guys had 57 snaps. Don't quote me on that, but it played out the way that we wanted. But I think Aubrey has a great feel for that. And he does such a good job of communicating. I got to give Aubrey a ton of credit just for his leadership as the overall assistant head coach for our team and his command. And I think, I thought his leadership was really on display yesterday, particularly with some of the moving parts and he and Beak and Coach Shula's ability to be able to adjust and adapt. But it's Aubrey. Aubrey does a great job being able to handle those rotations. We have a preset understanding of how it wants to go, but I also think there's a great feel that you have for the flow of the game, and that's what makes Aubrey a great coach.
And Seattle was one of the, they didn't blitz a lot coming into this game, but they brought a lot of pressure. Is that something that you expected that change, or is that something you kind of had to adjust to on the fly?
Well, some of it was in some 3rd downs, and we got into some, non-favorable situations. And then on some early downs when they did decide to match us with a lighter grouping, when we were in some of our heavier groupings, I think, pressure, moving the front, they did a good job. I got a lot of respect for that, for their coaching staff, for their players. And, you give them credit. And so I think, I don't want to say you're caught off guard, but I think it was a well thought out deal just based on, the way that the game unfolded in some of the specific situations that kind of came about and what they felt like was going to be the best thing, to be able to try to keep us, off kilter. And in a lot of instances, they had some good success.
And then just in terms of how Chris Shula called the game on defense. What impressed you about his approach?
I would say is consistent with Chris. He's steady. I thought, and I think ultimately Chris deserves a ton of credit, but I think it's also the defensive coaches. There's always collaboration. No play caller's doing it on his own. Chris does a great job, but I think there's great collaboration from Gift Smith to Drew Wilkins to Joe Caniglio to Greg Williams to Chris Beat to Aubrey Pleasant, Mike Harris, Alex Van Pelt. Our defensive staff as a whole does an excellent job. And I think Chris has a great feel. Even Smash does a great job of communicating some of those situations that came up. What kind of calls do we want to be in? One timeout left, where they're at, where's their field goal range? And so I wasn't surprised. That's who Chris is. That's who I've always known him to be. But I'm sure damn proud to be a part of it. And I'm just, I'm loving the job that he's doing. I'm loving seeing, my buddy continue to do a great job of leading the way and just being who he's always been.
Thank you.
You got it.
Sarah.
Hey, Sean. Baker said that his time in LA made football fun again. What do you remember about him kind of enjoying that stint in LA on a personal level?
It was such a short amount of time and it was unique circumstances, but I think just, being reminded, Andrew Whitworth always says it, and I try to remind myself, this is a blessing, never a burden. And I think when you're around people that motivate you and you have the appropriate perspective of really what this is and what a blessing it is, it's never a burden. And, I think Baker's a guy he's resilient. He's been through a lot of different stuff. And I think he was around people that he enjoyed being around, whether that's Liam or Zach Robinson or his teammates. He's a fun guy to be around. He's got a lot of resilience. He's got a lot of, natural leadership traits. And so those are some of the things that kind of stood out about him.
Zach Robinson told me he was blown away by the way Baker took notes, especially getting ready for that Thursday night game. What do you remember about his, I think he called it a unique studying system. What do you remember about that?
Just great penmanship. That's what I remember about it. A lot better penmanship than I have. But it was, I just remember a guy that had a pretty impressive, just mental stamina over a small period of time to absorb a lot of information. And then, it's one thing to absorb it. It's a totally different thing to be able to bring it to life when the enemy has a say. And it was impressive. But I think when you watch what he's done and kind of who he is, I think it's probably more on par for what we expect of Baker than kind of the outlier, when you look at the totality of everything he's done.
You've been pretty open about what that season was like for you on a personal level. Obviously, Baker said what that stretch meant to him, but what did that time do for you at the end of a tough season?
Yeah, it was a really challenging time. It revealed a lot of insecurities and shortcomings that I had, and I really had for a long time. It just wasn't revealed because we didn't necessarily have the results that kind of exposed, some of the things that I needed a lot of work on. And by no means am I perfect, but I think that was one of the biggest blessings in disguise. It was hard. Didn't like a lot of the things that it revealed, but it really forces you to look at yourself in the mirror and say, what are you really about? And I think it's a great testament that you can really understand some of the best things come and what you might feel like are darker moments or real adversity from a career, and it'd take me with a grain of salt. There's way bigger adversities than losing games, but from just a professional perspective and how much, you want to do right by others, it revealed a lot of things that I needed work on that are by no means perfect, but much improved. And I think it's why, I think you guys that know me, it's a lot more sustainable way of going about it because of the love and appreciation you have for the good, but also the hard times.
Did you feel a shift though? Like when he got there and you guys, the Thursday night game comes to mind, kind of the reaction in the locker room after, and just that stretch, like getting to have, I don't know, fun with him and kind of game planning when that wasn't maybe the case earlier.
Yeah, I thought he brought a spark. He just got a great charisma and presence. He brought a spark. It was obviously cool to be able to get that result after what's been a challenging season. But that's kind of who he is. And it's the same things that makes Matthew great too. That's what Matthew does for our team. And I think when you have certain guys that are innately thrust into leadership positions, whether that be the quarterback or the green dot on defense, and those guys have the things you're looking for, they naturally elevate the spaces that they're in and the people that they're around. And, that's what guys like Matthew and Baker do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maria.
Hey, Sean, when you talk about guys like Jacoby and Cam Kitchens, we talked to them yesterday and they were saying how, they practice these moves, every week in practice, but being able to translate that to the game is a completely different process. How do they go about doing that in your eyes?
Yeah, I think, you hear the word deliberate practice thrown around a lot, and the focus and concentration that's required to really deliberately challenge yourself, to push yourself past manageable expectations and lean in. And, it takes great looks from our look team, but it takes great coaching, great understanding of where your play ops are. I think what's great about our defensive coaches is that they give us the most challenging looks. Some of these, beaters, if you will, versus coverages or stressful downs. And when you work through the hard downs throughout the course of the week, hopefully then that'll allow it to be able to translate. And I think it's a tremendous credit for their ability to be locked in Wednesday through Friday when we're really practicing, full speed and doing the things that we're trying to do. And then it's also a credit to their intentionality. And then, Aubrey and Beak being able to give them some of their keys and expectations of what to expect based on what we've done and then what we anticipate them doing based on the film study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nate, then Dennis.
Hey, Sean, with the win yesterday and getting into first place in the division, you guys are at a spot where pretty much every goal you have is out there right now. So I know as you guys are going to approach this, one game at a time every week, but just what do you make of sort of the opportunities that are out there for you guys and your confidence in the makeup of this team to take advantage of those and build on what you guys have been doing?
Yeah, you just answered it though, Nate. And the reality is whether we didn't win or whether we did, it's one day at a time. And there is still so much football left. And I know it's fun when people pop up standings and things like that. I bet you, you got to handle your business for it to stay the same or vice versa. And all we can do is have a really good Monday, clean up the game. Guys come in and get healthy, and then, coaches go to work and figure out where we can improve and where we can grow, geared towards trying to stack good days this week. And that's all we can control. There's so many things that are out of our control. What I do like, Nate, is I think there's the humility and the understanding of what it takes one day at a time to continue to stack those days. That's what served us well to be able to get to 8-2 through 10 games. And if you told me that the season ended right now and the playoffs started, well, then there we go. But we got a long way to go. We got 7 guaranteed left, and ultimately we got 1 this week against a really good NFC team, and we're excited to dive into that. And so it is the boring coach answer, but it's also the truth that we can't do anything except for have a great week that leads to a quieted mind and basically a peace in the process to go play with the courage that's required and the stamina that's required on Sunday night when we kick off against the Bucs. But it's Monday through Saturday, and then once we get to Sunday, we want to peak at the right time.
Dennis.
Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. How much confidence do you have in your defense to make stops when you're making those fourth down calls to go for it?
A lot. I got a lot of but I got a lot of confidence in our offense too, to be able to execute. And the one that we didn't, we'll learn from, we'll grow, and more times than not, I'm making that call, 100 times out of 100 again, because I believe in our guys, and and you want to try to put them in the right situations for successful outcomes. But our defense has been great. I think they've been key and critical. I think they've been at their best in the most important moments. Thought it was awesome to be able to force the turnovers and tighten up in the red area like we did. And we knew what a great opponent that was, especially offensively. So a lot of confidence for both the offense and the defense when you're making decisions like that.
And in regards to Quentin, if he is out, who do you expect to take up the leadership mantle on that side?
That's a great question. I think Cam Curl's a great leader as well, does a great job with the vocal communication. I did mention, I thought a couple guys did an excellent job stepping up. Cam Kitchens played more snaps. You look at Josh Wallace did an excellent job coming in and playing almost 30 snaps. Jacoby Durant could play outside and inside. So we'll figure out what it looks like if we do have to replace him. But we got a bunch of guys that do a great job communicating, staying connected. And, if he is going to miss some time, we love Q, but that's a big void for sure.
Thank you, Coach.
You got it.